I'm not gonna say anything about that.
Catnip.
That's no mine.
I also won't say anything about that. You're not gonna make me. I'm not gonna say anything. Shrek Smash and Crash Racing. Aside from the usual mainline stuff that this series has games for, of course there are plenty of spin-offs for the Shrek series. Really, what doesn't Shrek have? He's got other racing games aside from this, party games, a 3D arena fighter, and there's even education games for Shrek. Whether I'll get to all of them or not, as well as how I'll balance those with the mainline games, we don't have to worry about. For right now at least. But for right now, I'll be looking at Shrek Smash and Crash Racing to see if Shrek at least has the racing genre down. Shrek and Gingy are having a breath-holding contest. I guess they are competitive off-screen. When Donkey shows up with Fairy Godmother's wand. You're probably wondering why he has this. Well, this game takes place after Shrek 2, meaning she's dead at this point. That's basically the whole reason he even has this. Anyways, Donkey accidentally, yet very conveniently, turns a bunch of random objects into vehicles, and everyone suddenly races. What, were you expecting more? Well, sorry to tell you, but the story never goes further than this. They don't explain why other characters are racing, they don't explain why they go to certain other locations in the game, there's nothing. I understand that racing games usually don't have much of a story to them to begin with, and then we're adding the fact that this is a license-based game on top of that, but there's almost nothing here. This could have ended up being somewhat interesting, but it feels like it's just shoved together just so that there's a story mode to the game. Plus, the story mode is just going through every track in the game in one run, so it's almost no different from the rest of the game anyways. With how poor the story, or lack thereof, was handled, and with how I learned only a paragraph of information since I started the game, there might as well have been no story at all. The beginning of the game gives you a montage of clips from Shrek material, like the first two movies. Even the Shrek 3D short is shown off, for those of you who remember that at all. There's just one itty bitty problem. These have nothing to do with the game. I actually couldn't care less about this intro since it amounts to nothing. I only see one of two things that this intro tried to accomplish. Either A is trying to give a big sense of story, and we already discussed about how well that went. Plus, I think the Shrek 3D scenes were put in to misguide you into thinking those were original for this game, because if you didn't see Shrek 3D, then you've never seen that before. So if it was trying to give a big sense of story, then it's just outright lying. And if this was trying to accomplish objective B, which was trying to get you hyped for the game itself, considering that again almost all of it has nothing to do with the game, is taken completely out of context and there's no actual gameplay in it, this does nothing but show off the editor's skills of cut and paste to the sound of music, which any basic editor can do. The look of this game is both better and worse than Shrek 2 was, and that game came out 2 years before this one. Shrek Super Slam, though I haven't reviewed that yet, and I'll have to at some point, looks better than both these games overall, and that came out 1 year before this one. I understand that it's a racing game, so most of the time you'll be seeing the back of characters' heads, but at the same time, some characters and icons look worse than the game 2 years beforehand, which is rather upsetting. Like, why is some of this acceptable? I'm pretty sure Little Red is bald in this game. At least the environments are good. So overall it's better than Shrek 2, but even then, it still doesn't make sense why some of these decisions were made. The music on the other hand is overall pretty alright. Even though there are a small amount of stinkers in there, the rest are catchy and are actually great to listen to, which I feel is very important for a racing game since you're not really going to be doing anything else aside from just driving around. For the voice actors, only 2 of them return from the original material, those being Leonis, while the 3 pigs in Pinocchio are voiced by the same person. The rest of the cast has pretty notable stuff though. James Arnold Taylor and Tara Strong return, and Michael J. Goff, who's done Gopher from Winnie the Pooh and Nasty Nork from Spyro, and Andre Sogliuzzo, I'm highly assuming that's how that's pronounced, who has done King Boomy and Smokey and Steamer from the Polar Express. So again, pretty notable people in roles. By the way, speaking of the voice actors, I wanted to correct myself for something that I stated in my Shrek 2 review. Mark Mosley doesn't voice the mirror in Shrek, that is Chris Miller. Mark Mosley actually voices another mirror that is in Shrek 2. I guess I just saw a mirror and correlated that with the one that more people know of, and I guess that's also why they got him to voice the mirror, because he already voiced a mirror. Regardless, that's my bad, and I have to own up to that. Starting off with 4 playable characters, you must complete races against 5 other people on 12 various tracks in order to unlock 8 other characters. Tracks vary in laps from 3 to 5, since some tracks are shorter or longer than others. In each track there are obstacles in your way that you will have to drive around, but if you are brave enough you can try to use your melee attack to get rid of them and enemies around you, but you can't use this attack on all obstacles. In fact, some of the time it's better to just drive around or use an item. Speaking of items, you get them from barrels lying around that you can go through, and there are 4 types of items. These are categories I'm making up, by the way. Nothing actually lists them in this game. There's assault items like the frog, balloon, garden gnome, and goose that usually go forward to attack enemies and can be used against some obstacles. The frog balloon is kinda weird though. That seems to just hit whatever it wants. Then there's traps, such as the jack-o'-lantern, giant beanstalk, and Lord Farquaad in a box, which are laid down so that someone can run into them, including yourself, so you have to remember where you place one. There's support items being the pixie dust, whirlwind, shield, and ogre strength, which changes the condition of the person who uses it, whether it be through a speed boost or invincibility. And last but not least, except it is the least because there's only 2 of them, the sabotage items. Magic frost and swamp gas affects everyone besides the person that uses them by temporarily stopping people from moving and gets people from going beyond a certain speed. There are some pixie dust spots along tracks which are basically boost pads, so you can go faster for a short amount of time. In case you need to rely on a last resort, you can jump over some items as well as gaps in the game. There's also a trial mode where you try to get a fast time when using nothing but pixie dust, and an arena mode that you can play against your friends if you so want to. This game uses the source material relatively nicely. There's a fair amount of characters and tracks used, the various items that have been made note of in the series itself. The giant gingerbread man is in a track even though he died in Shrek 2, and there's a ghost of Lord Farquaad in one of the tracks. I feel they could have done more with it though. They could have gone further with the fairy tale characters and locations, since there's only 12 tracks in the game, and every group of 3 is set to a certain theme, so there's even less diversity if you're going off of that. And I'm not including mirror tracks, since those are practically the same. The stuff they have works well enough, but they could do more, especially compared to Shrek Super Slam, but we haven't gotten there yet, so let's be quiet about that. Meleeing is actually a decently useful mechanic in this game. It allows for people that don't have items to have some way of fighting against other enemies in front of them, and can be used to keep enemies from trying to go past you. But it also doesn't devalue the use of items, since you will need them in order to attack enemies down the line or lay down traps. Although I can definitely see this being an issue in multiplayer, since everyone has the ability to use this while computers don't for some odd reason. I think the developers knew this game would be way more annoying to play if the computers used this too. Driving at crazy fast speeds feels satisfying when you're dodging items and obstacles, using ogre strength or pixie dust to go even faster, and destroying everything in your way with other items and your melee attack. Racing feels really good in this game. When it works. Notice how I ended off the previous segment with when it works, because when it doesn't, I'd rather be playing any other racing game. The problems usually occur on tracks that have a lot of turns or have more verticality than the others, because this game's physics are super wonky. Some areas allow you to ride along walls, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be able to do that. The end of these usually result in a jump, and going the way you want to can be irritating when you are already along a wall, since you'll more than likely just go flying and end up falling off the map. Landing on the ground can sometimes slow you down, where other times it's just fine, and you'll continue going the speed you are already at. And there's not really any way of figuring out how landing works properly. Whatever happens, happens, and you have to deal with it. Some tracks also have too much stuff in the area, making dodging safely a much bigger issue than it should be. Keep in mind, you can't destroy every obstacle in the game, so you have to drive around at least some of these obstacles, which again isn't easy when there's so much of it. Plus there's your opponents that are also putting items down, making it even harder to avoid getting hit. Enemies could also just randomly appear in front of me out of nowhere during races. It usually was through some kind of death abusing, I think, or something to do with some ramps in the game, but I was never able to replicate these myself, so this basically felt like the AI was cheating, and as with every racing game, the AI already has rubber band AI, which means no matter what you do to them, they'll basically come back at some point in time. So beating them was already difficult as it was, and now I've got to add in the fact that they could just cheat randomly. This causes some races to be a pain, and I've even lost some races due to this. You're not able to do the arena by yourself, which is the reason why I don't have any footage of it for this review. This completely cuts off a game mode for single player. That just leaves less replay value unless you're playing this game with friends, and I would imagine that you don't get that chance very often when it comes to this particular game. Characters are super noisy when playing. Sometimes they felt like they never shut up. This might not be too big of an issue for some people, especially if you're playing this with a group of friends, which is more than likely what you'd be doing if you played this game, so I can't complain about this too much. Plus the mute button exists, so, you know.
I want to die.
This game is a really big coin flip. If you're lucky, this game can be pretty fun and enjoyable, but if you're not, then this game could end up being really frustrating for you to play. It also doesn't help that if you're by yourself, you're cut off from an option of the game to begin with, and the story mode is almost non-existent. The only major value you'll get from this is playing with friends, but even then, there's no reason to play this over other racing games that would appear in your mind first, unless it's for a video or live stream or something like that. The melee mechanic and the fact that it's a Shrek game isn't enough alone to bring up the rest of this game's weak points, when there are many of them which can completely override everything else. This game has the potential to be more than what it is, but the execution never went through with that possibility. Now, is this one of the worst license-based party games out there? No, and I'm pretty sure I'll find plenty worse ones out there, but in terms of being one of the best ones, it's pretty far from it. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, I don't really know how I'm gonna do all the spin-offs when it comes to Shrek, because again, there's a good amount of spin-offs and not that many mainline games. So trying to find some kind of balance in between those is going to be really difficult, but I'll try and find something. But regardless, I finally managed to do another Shrek game, considering that Shrek 2 was my second review video ever, and it was like back in October when I first did it, and it's now April. I figured I should do another Shrek video. Will I take as long for another Shrek video? Probably not. Maybe. But as I said earlier, the plans for balancing out everything is going to take a decent amount of time, especially when I have to balance out that, along with all the other stuff that I want to try and do, but it should work out okay. But in case you haven't, make sure you guys go down into the description, because that's where all of my social medias are located. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Discord are all in the description, and those are all ways of making sure that you are kept up to date on any form of updates that I have for the channel, including uploads, ideas for videos, things along those lines. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as share this video out with your friends and family, and any Shrek memers out there. There's a good amount of you, I know it. But until the next video, take care.
I want you for a